good morning to you and good afternoon to some of the people that have called in as well. Thank you, Elias. Nice to see you after such a long time again, and the progress you've made. Congratulations on your new container terminal.
Thank you.
It's time that we follow suit soon. Thank you, Henry, for joining as well. You know, being part of our world, and also for transport events, and for all those people that I've seen have joined as well. It's such a pleasure to be able to communicate with the outside world. You know, given the challenges that we've experiencing through the COVID-19. You know, my presentation will follow very much what Elias has covered. I think we're very common in terms of the challenges facing the region and the continent. You know, but I will sort of elaborate a bit on the new normal that we should be expecting in the future, of where opportunities, investment opportunities, where things need to happen for us to be able to help our economies in growing in the region. So if I may start quickly in terms of giving you a background of where we are and how we're landing here, is back in January, the prospect of Africa was looking very good. You know, it was predicted that it will grow, you know, just under 4% in 2020, and then continuing to 2021 on that basis. And if we look at South Africa itself, in terms of how we were developing, is tourism was booming. You know, we had received a lot of individuals, 1.7 million people passing through our ports. You know, that's compared to what was happening last year. Then boom, we hit by what everybody has been experiencing, which is an unprecedented to all of us. The coronavirus took the upper stage, and it's still with us. As we speak, we are locked in our cabins, some of us, suffering from cabin fever. Fortunately, yeah, it's still summer, so I can look outside and see the sun. Less than 2 months later, that projection has now been revised to 2%. Even that 2% looks very optimistic at this stage. And basically, if we look at where Africa is, which was on a nice trajectory in terms of its growth, will be experiencing its first recession in 25 years. You know, basically being in a very similar position to what China is going through now. And this has attributed a very disruptive environment in terms of our supply chains. You know, the value of fixed direct investments, the amount of funds and money that's being exchanged and coming through into our areas. And it's hit hard on some of our industries, especially tourism and oil, which I'll elaborate a bit on that. But just to give a perspective of where I'm coming from, the Transnet National Port Authority is an operating division of Transnet. And in Transnet, as an organization, we operate rail, pipeline, and ports. And we have some specialty units that do rail maintenance, construction, and a few other things. And on the port side, we separated into the National Ports Authority, which is a landlord port, owning 8 commercial ports in South Africa. I'll come into that. And our sister division, which is Port Terminals, operates 16 cargo terminals, predominantly container terminals, and bulk terminals in terms of iron ore, manganese, and coal. That's what we look like. And in our area, especially in our area, the cost of logistics has remained very high. Now, if you look at where our industries are located and where our ports of entry and exit are, we operate on a very high fixed cost in terms of what we add to consumer goods and to our customers. If maybe I can follow the pointer, is that we have the 8 ports across our coastline, and the main area of activity in industry is located in this area where I am currently right now speaking to you. And the bulk of the other areas of activities in terms of our minerals and mining operations are in this sort of area right inland. So we have to not only use the ports as exit, we need to transport goods on road and rail over long distances. Which is the picture just I've given you, where showing the location of our ports, our 8 ports, and the various railway lines that run into the hinterland of the country. We showing some of cross-border. You can see where Elias was talking from in Namibia there, where there's an attempt to make that connection too. If we look at the current challenges, if I may frame this in terms of what we're going through now, is that the pandemic has damaged all sectors of our economy, especially where we were making a lot of progress. You know, agriculture has been hit hard, you know, because of grounding of airlines. You know, we are unable to export flowers. It's difficult now to operate and export fruit and vegetables, given that we were unable to deal with what we call non-essential goods through our ports. That's easing now, so we should be starting to see some improvement. And tourism, you know, which is our third most biggest foreign exchange earner, has been hit very hard, and it's almost dried up. And if you look at where it's hitting us the most, is basically our aviation is ground to a halt. There is no movement, either domestic or international, bar for a few airlines where we need to get locals and foreigners in or out of the country. The whole commercial airline business is to that halt. And we're currently looking at some of our airlines being under business rescue, which is a form of bankruptcy management. And our 2 most national airlines are going through that now. And the construction industry, which has been greatly affected, because I can see Elias has been able to do something. We haven't been able to make progress in infrastructure development for a while, which meant that the construction industry had suffered greatly from that. But the COVID-19 phenomena has sort of exacerbated that and made that even worse. And if we look at the transport and logistics side of things, the manufacturing also ground to a halt. We are a very serious manufacturers of vehicles in our region, and we export to all the countries in most countries in Europe, in North America, and in the Far East. And that's because the manufacturing had come to a stop. We have seen a very decline substantial decline in terms of our exports to those other countries. So it's hit these areas where we're very active very hard. And if we look at the expansion then, that's also come to a halt in terms of our construction, you know, given the pandemic. And the movement of goods in relation to supporting the essential services is the only thing that's operating in our supply chain. And from Monday this side, there's been a slight opening of that, in a sense that we are able to slowly, through certain levels that the country has come up with, to open certain parts of the industry. We have our warehouses full because they've been unable to move, because in an attempt to make sure that we don't clog the ports, we've moved a lot of goods and containers into warehouses because they're not allowed to go to the end destination, which is the customer. So that's created a problem now where the ports are also getting clogged up with nowhere to store containers. So the secondary impact, I won't spend too much time on this one, is I think it's for everybody to see, the hospitality and the tourism, which for us has affected our cruise line activity. We had to abruptly stop our cruise line activity with the lockdown situation. The entertainment, which tends to bring a lot of people into the country, has also come to a stop. You know, our textile industry has also suffered a great deal. There is a bit in terms of redirecting it to manufacturing goods for to deal with the pandemic, but you know, it's a worldwide phenomena, so we're trying to find a place within there as well. Now, looking at the changing world and opportunities in terms of how we see things folding into the future, it's quite clear that Africa and the region needs to look at how it can diversify economies. It is very clear that when we suffer in terms of the commodities we have in such a way that we suffer now, it tends to have a much exaggerated impact on our economies than economies that are a lot more diversified than we are. So diversification of our economies has become very important. We were steady in terms of putting together infrastructure. That has to move a lot quicker. We need to accelerate the infrastructure development. And then I'll explain why it's now become so important. And Africa doesn't trade with itself very much. I think now that we see the difficulties of changing in terms of countries being in lockdown, regional integration and trading becomes paramount, because then you can use the local infrastructure that you've created. We have a population that is growing throughout Africa. Most of it is moving into the cities and urbanizing. Most of it is young and very affair with the technology, and it's requiring us to operate differently so that we move and evolve with the technologies that are presenting themselves to us. I'll sort of elaborate on that as I develop this argument on where we need to go for the future. You know, basically the emerging trend is that the digital technology is now with us, and we see it very much in terms of how we operate our ports. Having moved to a booking system with the help of dealing with the pandemic, we've seen a much more improved operation of our port. And the value chains that have been traditional have been particularly affected by some of the shift in terms of what's happening in the traditional manufacturing places. So we see an opportunity for Africa to pick up some of the manufacturing that we foresee will be moving out of China as it joins the first world in terms of its wages. And we hope to pick up some of this manufacturing into Africa. So, but the issue of infrastructure becomes the common one, that we are spending a lot on infrastructure, if I look at the numbers there, but we need to spend more. So our roads, our ports, and across industries, we need to do more. And this event has made that very, very clear. And in the short term, I think we need to deal with the health and well-being of our people, you know, so that we they're healthy and well preserved. And the life-saving medical equipment and supplies, we need to make sure that there's a constant supply throughout our supply chain. So that's really been our focus for now. And ports are very vital, in ensuring that we're able to service most of the countries in the hinterland, which are landlocked. We're still largely dependent on commodities in terms of oil, coal, and iron, and metals, and some agricultural products in terms of cocoa, timber, and palm oil. And the intention then is to see how we can diversify away from this commodity focus into the manufacturing of goods. I think that's probably, in terms of our economies, the main challenge. And the ports for that are very important, and they become very pivotal because as we move into this new economy, our ability for flow of goods across our borders onto offshore has also become very critical in its nature. I will quickly go through this just to give you an idea that if you look at Africa itself, I think we tend to underestimate the size of the continent in terms of its opportunities and what it can bring to the world. I've just put a map there of Africa. You can see we can fit the whole of United States, China, India, and Europe, within the African continent. So it just gives you an indication of the size and in the future how important it's going to be. Only if we can understand in terms of how we can paint ourselves a picture of how we operate in this uncertainty. It is difficult. We call the dark continent, but we remain hopeful and optimistic that as we take the opportunity presented by phenomena such as this one, we can relook at ourselves and reimagine what sort of society we require. And going through this requires a lot of courage, going through this daunting process, especially if we go around the uncertainty of this COVID-19 pandemic, not knowing how long it will last, how it will affect us, and the difficulties of social distance in our environment where we're very much community oriented. It's a very big challenge. So pursuing business then in Africa is we need to look in terms of the long term. So, and the long term is how can we then bring in activities that will sustain us. And there are a few things that I really must do for Africa that we must do. And some of them is looking at how we can leverage on this digital technology and the natural resources we have in combining the new and the old economy, which will be a subject of a booming environment in the future. And we have the opportunity in the sense that we still have a lot of unmet needs and unfulfilled demand. And really Africa is really ready for entrepreneurship and innovation in a very big scale. We're currently signed up to look at how we can develop our tourism sector in terms of a new facility in the Port of Durban, which is the expansion of a cruise terminal. You can see a picture of it. That was signed about two years ago, and we broke soil sometimes in January of this year, and unfortunately we had to suspend that for a while whilst going through this phenomena. We should be able to start doing that. But as you see, even under these conditions, we're still hopeful that normality will come back again, and businesses like cruise liners will come back to our shores and life will continue in as normal as we would wish for. So accelerating technological change is also helping us to look at how we can interact with our consumers. If you look at Africa for now, it still imports a third of its food and beverages. The opportunities for ship liners, terminal operators, port operators are still huge, in a sense that we're far from reaching those levels of saturation. And for that, we hope that we'll be able to sort out all the regulatory complexities that Elias talked about, and look at how we can recast these challenges to spur innovation and to supply the demand that's required by the market. And ports and terminals can help a great deal in this regard. And attracting private, this is, I believe this probably could be my last slide and sort of parting shots and thoughts. Attracting private sector is carefully increasing, and it's becoming very important in developing large projects. We are really open for business. There's a slow uptrend in commodity prices, which is making us being able to sustain some of this infrastructure that we'd like to build. And then the port authorities, would like to see that they drive a strong agenda for private sector involvement in the port investment. At least in our environment, that's what we're looking to do in the next coming few months and years. And improving systems and skills, I think Elias alluded to this as well, is of vital importance as well, to be able to operate in this new economy, in this new digital economy. And for us, port investment is not only about port and terminals. We also looked into how we connect to our landlocked countries and areas of economic activities on our continent. Thank you very much for listening to me. I know it's a bit long, but it's one of those subjects that you can spend a long time talking about, because there's just so much to do. Unfortunately, so little time to do it. I think I'll end there.